So in this video, I am with yet another guest, a good friend of mine, Kyle.
I'm the roommate.
He's the roommate who lives right across the hall from me. And so you just wanted to be in more videos with me, and having watched our most recent movie, Risen, you especially wanted to participate in this talk.
Because I am the history man.
He's the history buff, he's the history guy. Now, I'm the movie guy. I don't know that much history. History isn't in my knowledge, and history isn't in the best of my interest or the best of my learning curve. So all the history and all the culture and some of the religion stuff that I don't know, he helps fill in.
History and religion, they're very tightly intertwined.
Are your two specialties?
Yes, they're my specialties, and well, yeah, we'll call them specialties. Let's go with that.
But yeah, today we're talking about a Jesus movie that's titled Risen. This was directed by Kevin Reynolds, and it's a different sort of take on the Jesus story. As most other average Jesus movies look at, like Jesus' torturing and his death on the cross, and then eventually his resurrection, and most movies pretty much end on that note of, hey, he rose from the dead, and that's great. But this is a different take on that.
This is very different because we start the movie with the death of Jesus and go from there.
This movie pretty much starts with, Clavius, our main character, military Roman tribune Clavius, kind of wandering through the desert, and then he walks into this farmer's house, I think it was.
Yes, he walks into a farmer's house and begins to relate a story.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole movie is a flashback, which I'm okay with. We get to see Clavius's how he works as a leader. We get to see him putting down some Jewish resistance and brutally murdering their leader, and proving that he is in fact the top Roman, aside from Pontius Pilate.
Yeah. Like, Pontius basically tells Clavius, hey, there's some people who are being put to death, and this was all the Jews' deal. Just make sure that's all carried out
and so
properly.
He does. He returns, and Pontius tells him, hey, go look over this, and he does, and he goes to see 3 Jews on crucifixes, and a lot of screaming, shouting people. And I wonder if you can guess who one of those people was.
Might be our very beloved Jesus, or Yeshua, as he is referred to in this movie.
Yes, his actual name. The non-Anglicanized version of it. A few of the Jews who are obviously followers of Jesus ask if they can take care of his body. The permission is granted. It's been granted by Pontius Pilate. All the Jews that demanded that Jesus be crucified, they want this body so that they can prove to everyone that he's really dead.
Right.
Or else, if he's going to stay in the crypt, they want it sealed by a neutral party, which in this case is the Romans.
Right.
The Romans are the neutral party, which is not something that gets to be said very often about the Romans.
Right.
But Pontius again agrees to it, and they seal it with official stamps and everything.
With those red stamps.
The red seals, wax seals, and ropes.
And the tomb door and the stone is just covered in all these seals and all the ropes to, their way of guaranteeing that the body stays where it's supposed to be.
Right. 2 guards are left to make sure that the body isn't stolen, and we move on from there. Because the next day,
Pontius comes along and says something has happened to the body.
Something terrible has happened. And we have our main guy, Clavius. He shows up and he's really confused. Because the ropes have been singed, the wax has melted away, and the rock has been
moved
shifted.
away.
And there is no, in their minds, of course, it took a good number of strong Roman soldiers to move that rock into place.
If possible, to move the rock over.
So they don't understand how this rock could have been moved from the inside, which it looks like it was moved from the inside. Clavius is confused. The Pharisees and Pontius seem to believe that the followers of Yeshua
have taken the body.
Clavius is kind of on the fence of believing that. He gets his little second in command whose name is Lucius, or Lucius, however you want to say it, played by Tom Felton, also known as Draco Malfoy, and tells him to go on the lookout and find the followers of Yeshua.
Find the followers, and then hopefully round enough people up to find the body.
And
as well.
meanwhile, Clavius is going to go talk to the 2 guards that he left, who have fled and are now hiding with the Pharisees because they don't want to be killed for being asleep on the job. And we go through this kind of back and forth of they capture a guy who knows where a couple of the followers are, and they catch Mary Magdalene.
They catch Miriam too, or one of the blind
They
ladies?
capture an old lady named Miriam, an old blind lady named Miriam, who isn't a disciple, but is a follower of Jesus.
Who's the guy who comes before Bartholomew?
It's Bartholomew that they find. Bartholomew is a very jovial
Very
fellow.
cheery and just big and smiley kind of guy.
He has this sense in the film, the character has this sense that he is filled with a kind of a religious joy. You can see that in him. He's very joyful about who he is. And he's very important because they've let Mary Magdalene go because they know she isn't going to cooperate with them. Bartholomew, on the other hand, they finally kind of get it into him that, listen, just tell us where Yeshua is, tell us where the body is, and we'll let you go and we won't hurt any of your friends. And he goes and whispers to Clavius, he is everywhere.
His
all
followers
around
are
us.
everywhere.
Yes, his followers are everywhere, he is everywhere. And true to their word, they let him go because they did promise to do so.
They're like, okay, you told us what we need to know.
Yeah.
Be on your way.
Meanwhile, we've also come across the 2 guards. And one of them kind of spouts off this very scripted story about how the followers of Yeshua came in the night and clubbed them over the head and took the door out of the way. But the other one, who Clavius finds in a bar,
One of the guards
is
in the bar.
very happily drunk and has been paid, so he knows that he's been paid to perpetuate a story.
Right.
And he finally gets him to admit the truth, which he doesn't want to admit because it appears to have driven him mad, which is he saw a bright light blast the boulder out of the way, burn the ropes, melt everything, and he doesn't know how to accept that, so he's just going to drink it.
Drink it all away.
Pilate, at this point, is getting more and more frustrated because the Emperor is coming, and they need to have this business taken care of before the Emperor. Clavius brings Pontius a crucified body with holes in the hands and the feet.
And says, can't we just
and
use that?
has a and it said, it says, can we use this? Because this is what his body should look like by now. It hasn't been properly taken care of or anything, except for a couple of sacred oils. So this is what his body would look like. But Pontius doesn't want to do that because it leaves a chance that when the Emperor shows up, they'll bring up the Emperor will catch wind of this man still being alive.
Right.
Even if they show him a body, the Emperor's not going to believe it if half the Jews in the city are all talking
still
about
proclaiming that he's back from the dead. Exactly.
Then the snitch comes back. The snitch, who they've paid a nice price to inform them, tells them that he's found the followers. And they come running into this market square, this kind of a bazaar type area.
Right.
They're going through searching, and Clavius is the one who stumbles across this building by himself. Everybody else is spread out searching. And he opens the door, and he looks inside, and there's a bunch of people sitting down, talking, and right in the midst of them, he sees...
Yeshua himself.
Yes. The man he saw dead on a cross...
is now sitting there talking and communing with the rest of his followers.
and has the gall to look at him and smile. And so Lucius shows up, and Clavius tells him to take the men back... to go back, and they'll continue later. And he says, but we've got him here somewhere. And Clavius says, no, take them back. I don't need you. I'm going to take care of something.
Uh-huh.
And Lucius is very
Lucius
sad.
just nods it off and
he goes
and says okay.
And Clavius walks in and slumps down against the wall because he can't believe what he's seeing.
There's a dead guy right in front of him who's completely alive.
He's watching this man show off the wounds, all of them. The ones in his feet, his hands, the wound in his side.
Mm-hmm.
And something has happened now that Clavius cannot reconcile. He has seen two things that can't exist at the same time. He has seen a dead person and he has seen a live person.
Right.
The most important part of it, though, is that as the followers are all talking to Yeshua, they're talking about what to do at this point. And then in the midst of all of this, just vanishes.
Yeshua just vanishes
out
away.
Of just into nothing. And Mary Magdalene knows where he's going. He's going to Galilee.
Mm-hmm.
But all the men, they stand up and they say, we're going to Galilee. We're going to go find Yeshua. Clavius is going to come along. He leaves a very long note
for Lucius
and Pontius saying, don't follow me. I have seen two things which don't add up.
Right.
And I have to figure this out. And of course, they just think he's gone crazy and defected,
right,
essentially. So now Clavius is a traitor, which is really bad. You don't want to be a traitor.
Especially in that time and with the situation.
Yeah. And Pontius puts Lucius in charge of the contingent and says, go find him.
Basically.
Bring the body back, and I don't care who's dead and who's alive. Just get him back
Just
here.
bring Clavius back here. So now we have two manhunts.
That's right. We follow Clavius as he follows the followers, the disciples, as he follows the disciples. And they go along this journey. Lucius does catch up with them at one point in a very interesting scene where Clavius convinces him to just leave them alone.
As they're wandering through that valley, and Lucius comes down and tries to strike him.
It's actually a really cool scene, too, where there's this swarm of Romans coming, and they're looking, and they're up on top of this cliff.
Right.
And Clavius and the disciples are going through this very little narrow valley.
Uh-huh.
And Lucius had enough sense to realize that there was something down there, so he went down and ends up right in front of them,
right,
with his sword on him. Clavius manages to talk him down, say, just tell them you couldn't find us, let us go. Lucius leaves and takes his contingent with him, leaving the followers of Jesus, or Yeshua, and Clavius to continue on their way to Galilee.
Uh-huh.
Where they do eventually make it. They decide to go out fishing, and while they're fishing, Yeshua comes back.
There's another man kind of wandering around the shore, and Simon and all his followers are like, oh, who's that? And then
he says, as he's walking along the beach, they haven't caught a fish all night.
Uh-huh.
And he's walking along the beach, and he says, try the right side.
Right.
And they throw the net over, and they just catch all these fish.
Bundle of fish.
So much fish that the boat's tipping over.
Exactly.
And as soon as they see that, Simon Peter and the rest, they realize that this is Yeshua.
Uh-huh.
So they all come into shore, and they've brought their food. We get to see a really cool scene of Yeshua healing a leper. Yeshua takes him food and kisses him on the head, and you can see in one shot very clearly the man is disfigured. Mm-hmm. He's got all of the signs of
all the boils, the
leper,
and everything.
Yeah. And after he kisses him on the forehead, and Clavius is watching, and everybody's like, "Watch, he's going to heal that."
Uh-huh.
Clavius is watching, and all he sees is him kiss him, and he's like, "That's kind of weird." But then the leper, is walking away, and he's walking more standing up straight, and he turns around, and his face is normal. And Clavius again is like, I still don't understand.
What is going on?
Yeah, I don't understand what's happening. That night, Clavius has a talk with Yeshua, trying to kind of come to grips with everything.
Put the pieces back together and understands what exactly is going on.
And Yeshua kind of has this innate sense, because of course he is Jesus. And so he's trying to he's reading Clavius.
He's having this defined sort of power into Clavius'
and
mind.
it comes down to basically, what is it that you want? What is it that what is it that you hope for? And Clavius is basically on the verge of saying, I don't know, but then Yeshua guesses it out of thin air. He just guesses, do you just want to see one day without bloodshed? And that
Clavius kind of molds it over.
That hits him really hard, and he realizes, yes, that's what I want to see. He's a Roman who doesn't want to see bloodshed anymore. And they have a good talk. The next morning, everybody wakes up. Yeshua's gone. Where did he go? He's over on the bluff, and he speaks to them and says that they will find him, or he will always be with them.
You will be fishers of men.
Yeah. And
make disciples of all nations.
He's at this point he's done the bit with Simon Peter, where he asks him 3 times, do you love me? Then you must lead my sheep. He waves goodbye, and there's this big
flash of light,
supernatural
knocks all of them
energy.
Back, and then
he's gone.
He has vanished again, this time for good, as he has ascended up to heaven.
And this is, of course, the transformation and ascension. And the disciples and Clavius go down to the beach, and they are kind of all hugging. Clavius is
mingling in their own groups,
and they're talking to some locals in the area, kind of doing their preaching. But they're all going to go off to different corners of the world and preach and find new followers. Simon Peter says to Clavius, will you be a fisher as well?
Are you going to tell this story
Are you going to tell your story? He kind of hesitates, and he says, very well.
Yeah.
But you will always be welcome among us, brother. And sends him on his way. And Clavius heads off into the wilderness by himself, leading us to the beginning of the movie.
To what we saw at the beginning of the story,
where he walked
wandering the desert.
So essentially, this whole film is him telling the story. We get a bit at the end of Lucius returning, or Lucius showing up next to Pontius right as the emperor's ship is pulling in.
Yes.
And Pontius says, looks at him, and Lucius shakes his head no, and he says, no matter. They're long gone anyway.
Right.
And that's that. I liked the film a lot. It was very, in terms of the Romans and the Jews and everything in Jerusalem, it was very historically accurate.
It filled in all the spaces, and it really set up and created the world with all the architecture and the costumes and all the people involved in it. Just built everything up from the ground up.
So that's kind of the story.
Yeah.
A shortened version
That's
of the
just
story.
a rounded up form of the premise.
And now we'll move on to other stuff like casting.
Did you want to talk about the casting?
I want to talk about the
just
casting.
Just a little bit?
I want to talk about the casting a little bit.
You see, Kyle over here is just a little bit picky over how, especially in historical pieces like this and in biblical pieces like this, how characters of the past, and especially of other worlds and their cultures, are cast. And Hollywood has been really hit and miss with it. It's been okay, and it's been not so good at all.
Right. And, I honestly, as a rule, whitewashing, as they're calling it, it's not that big of a deal for me in some things, but in other pieces, especially when it's actual history, it bothers me.
Right.
For example, Gods of Egypt was heinous in this, but I probably
we don't
wouldn't
need to talk about that in this review.
I know, that's
Go
a good
on.
point. Anyway, no, the whitewashing thing I really don't care about in some movies, but in historical movies I do. And when you have, in Jesus movies especially, when they're casting the most gorgeous Greek man or Portuguese man who just doesn't look Middle Eastern at all.
Or the most celebrity-looking man.
Right.
Bible series.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that's specifically what I'm referring to, is the Bible miniseries on the History Channel. But even others, even a white guy, I have a little bit of issues with. But this time, in this film, they cast someone who actually looked Middle Eastern to play Jesus.
He has the physical features.
He has the physical features. He's actually from New Zealand, but he does have the features of a Middle Eastern so much that he's often cast in those roles. But it's not just with Jesus, it's with the whole cast. Everyone who plays a Roman has very Roman features, the very sharp Roman features, the very slanted, nose and everything. They cast it perfectly. All of the Jews are Middle Eastern looking people, like they're supposed to be. And it works, and I was very, very happy with that. And that's really my whole thing with the casting, is they got Jesus right on this one.
Well, they got it closer to being right.
Yeah, they got it closer to being right, because, I'm sorry, but Jesus was a brown-skinned man with very kinky, curly hair.
He was poor.
Yes.
He looked worse than most people on Sunday, I think.
Yes. Pontius Pilate was an interesting character.
He reminded me a lot of the Pontius from The Passion of the Christ.
Yes.
They're not cast the same actor, but they were very similar.
Which I think was kind of good, because I had that illusion too. They're very similar looking
Wait, is he the same actor from Passion?
Right.
And I looked it up. No, I guess it's not.
The thing is, though, is that this Pilate is characterized just a little bit different. And I think it's because we're seeing, in between the two movies, we're seeing two different versions of Pontius Pilate. In Passion of the Christ, we see a Pontius Pilate who is just a bystander, watching. He gives an order, but he's asking questions. He seems almost sympathetic towards Jesus. He's saying, does he really deserve to die? And he seems a little sympathetic. Whereas the Pilate that we see in Risen is...
He's much more strict and direct.
He's very strict, but this is after Yeshua has died. I mean, he just wants the whole deal to be done.
Right.
And that's just how a Roman would be. I want it done. I want it done now. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And I'm mad that I'm still having to deal with it. The Pharisees were supposed to take care of it. They didn't, and now I'm mad. So the Pontius Pilate in this one is a little different, but I liked him still. He still seemed like a good character.
The much bigger head honcho leader, and just he's trying to get the job done, and he's trying to get the job right. And keep things on the lowdown as possible, and keep things as under control as possible. And if he has this missing link with Yeshua's on the loose, and now Claudius is on the loose, and now he's just looking worse and worse as a leader.
And as for other characters in the movie, Lucius, I felt, was an interesting character. I just wish there had been more of him.
Yeah.
Or else they could have made him a little bit more impactful in the scenes he was in.
He's just the sidekick.
He's just kind of there. He just shows up to be there. He's just kind of a generic sidekick, which is why I wish either they had given Tom Felton a larger role, or
not cast him at all.
Given him a larger role, or else, cast someone else as generic sidekick who becomes, the big guy later.
Right.
And maybe this is my own personal feeling, just because I'm so used to him in Harry Potter, and he's such a big part of that. But I felt like, being Tom Felton, he could have had a larger... his role could have at least been expanded upon a little more.
Right.